All right, so good morning, everyone. Welcome to this Workforce Wednesday webinar. My name is Kirsten Bayer with the Illinois Center for Specialized Professional Support at Illinois State University, and I will be your technical support and moderator for today's session. I hope you all are staying warm and safe today. I know the state of Illinois is fully engrossed in a snowstorm. So hopefully you are able to enjoy the snow day a little bit today, but we appreciate you joining us this morning. Just a couple of housekeeping things before we get started for today. We're going to be talking about the Unified State Plan this morning. We're joined by KEB's team, and Drew will introduce himself and talk a little bit more about that here in a second. We did want to promote and welcome questions and comments to any concerns you might have throughout the session. We just ask that you please address those in the chat or the Q&A function of Zoom. And that's really just due to the fact that we can save those functions in case we don't get to all the questions, and we can have a record of those. And then this session is also being recorded and it will be up on our Illinois Workforce Academy website. We've moved all of our Workforce Wednesday webinars to our new Illinois Workforce Academy website for the year of 2022. So I will put that link in the chat here momentarily. You will also receive a follow-up email tomorrow that will have that same link engrossed in it, as well as a follow-up survey that we do after every Workforce Wednesday webinar. If you have 5 minutes to your workday, either tomorrow or sometime next week, if you're closed the rest of the week due to weather, we would appreciate that feedback. And then I do have the live transcript or live closed captioning turned on for us today. So if you need that for accessibility reasons, or if you would just like it for note-taking purposes, you can feel free to turn that on as well. And also you can feel free to reach out to me via the chat if you experience any technical difficulties or have any questions about the facilitation or the background of the session today. So I'm going to hand it off to Drew and he can get us started with the presentation.
Thanks, Kirsten. Are we going to do those polls?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Sorry.
No
No day
worries.
for me too this morning, everybody. Okay. So which partner do you best represent? So we're just doing some beginning Workforce Wednesday webinar polls that we do every Wednesday. Thank you, Drew, for the reminder. And they kind of just give us some brief analytics about who you all are to gauge our audience this morning. So if you're joining us from Title I, Title II, Title III or IV, or if you represent another WIOA partner or stakeholder, or our state or local workforce innovation board.
I just asked just so we know who our attendees are. If you're answering other there, if you could put that other partner or stakeholder that you represent into the chat, that would be appreciated.
We've got a couple more seconds here. Okay, I'm going to end that poll and share the results. So a lot of you are joining us from Title I this morning, as well as most of you from other WIOA partners and stakeholders. So again, like Drew said, if you could put that other WIOA partner and stakeholder in the chat, we would appreciate that. And then where are you joining us from this morning? Where's your local area? If you're more central or up north Illinois, you're probably experiencing what Drew and I are experiencing. We both reside in central Illinois, and we have lots of snow today, so lots of school closures, business closures, etc. If you're from southern Illinois, which is where Mike is joining us from this morning, Mike Baker, he said he's just getting rain this morning, so he is lucky. Hopefully it doesn't freeze, but we're all very fortunate that out of the pandemic, we are able to work remotely and still offer this information this morning. We'll give everyone a couple more seconds to answer this poll. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end it here and share the results. Most of you are joining us from Chicago, Northern Illinois, and Central Illinois. So you're probably experiencing the same kind of weather as Drew and I. So welcome everyone. Thank you for taking those beginning polls with us this morning. And now I'll hand it off to Drew to start the presentation.
All right, thanks Kirsten, and thanks to everyone joining us. Again, my name is Drew Thomason. I'm with KEB. I help facilitate and the development and implementation of various WIOA activities, including the Unified State Plan. And today I'm here in my capacity as a facilitator of the 2020 Unified State Plan modification. Real quick, somebody asked the question whether the slide deck will be available after today, after the presentation. Certainly will be. We'll work with Kirsten on that follow-up email to ensure that you get a copy of this presentation. So I'm going to just very briefly kind of for everyone in the room review the main aspects and players in the WIOA system here in Illinois. So there are 4 core WIOA partners here. They're Title 1B, which is DCEO, and that's work readiness and training, adults, dislocated workers, and youth. Title 2, which is the Illinois Community College Board, and that's adult education and literacy, integrated education and training, and workforce preparation. Title 3, which is Wagner Pizer, and that is IDES, so employment services. And then Title 4, vocational rehab, that's IDHS, and that's disability training and employment. So these core partners, along with the State Workforce Board, lead the state's effort to implement WIOA and are deeply involved in the development and modification of the Unified State Plan. Content related to meeting specific program requirements for each core partner must be included in this plan. So where does everyone kind of fit into the WIOA system? So the ultimate authority within Illinois in the WIOA system lies with the governor. The Illinois Workforce Innovation Board, which is the name of our state's board, provides strategic leadership and oversight to ensure the state meets the workforce needs of employers, workers, and job seekers. And then the 4 core partners and other required partners within WIOA provide services to employers and job seekers throughout the state through the one-stop delivery system. The IWIB, that's the Illinois Workforce Innovation Board, and the core partners are required to develop and submit a state plan every 4 years. They're also required to submit a modification to that plan after 2 years or halfway through that 4-year plan. Since the current state plan was submitted and approved in 2020, this is a modification year. So Illinois' WIOA Unified State Plan, it provides a vision of the governor's integration of workforce, education, and the economic development policy and programs for the state. State plan also serves as a federal compliance document for the United States Department of Labor and Education under the federal WIOA law. The federal law requires states' plans to last 4 years, as I said, and to have a modification halfway through, which is why we're here today. So this modification represents a shift in the attitude and approach to the workforce plan. The first plan under the current WIOA law was submitted in 2016 and ran through 2020. Much of that plan and its development was around wrestling with the implementation of this new federal law. And just by those circumstances, the plan might have been a little reactive as opposed to proactive. The second plan was submitted in 2020, and it began a real transition to a very proactive approach to the workforce system. However, it was still evolving from a system built under that previous law. This modification kind of represents a push towards a system that is even more proactive and integrated. And much of this work was happening already, but it was certainly expedited by COVID-19. So in this modification, the executive summary kind of sets the context for the past 2 years. It's where a lot of the implications that COVID caused and reactions are addressed in the modification. Both looking back as to what we've done over the past 2 years, but again, this is a plan looking forward. So much of that is also looking forward to the next 2 years as to how we're going to address things. In this executive summary, we address the desire to reimagine the workforce system through a lens of equity. Here and throughout the modification, we incorporate the work that the IWIB Equity Task Force has done and continues to do, as well as acknowledging that the Governor's Commission on Workforce Equity and Access will deliver recommendations this year that will play heavily into the writing of a new plan for the 2024-2028. So in addition to addressing the economic sea change brought on by COVID-19 and other larger socioeconomic issues over the past several years, in addition to also direction from the IWIB and the governor towards creating a more equitable workforce, this modification must meet federal guidance. And again, much of that guidance that was issued in December is informed by the ongoing economic impacts of the pandemic. So there were 4 general areas issued in that guidance that the federal government wanted to see addressed: the data-driven decision-making, reemployment from the past 2 years, equity in service delivery and education programming, and enhancement of supportive services offerings. Let's start with the data-driven decision-making. So in this guidance, the Fed said that states must analyze data to assess disparities among various populations and should focus planning efforts on not just how to tackle workforce challenges generally, but also how to best adapt and adjust workforce goals and strategic focus for communities with disproportionately higher unemployment rates and lower earnings, particularly among underserved populations. So how did this modification go about doing that? Well, it started with an analysis of what has changed between when the 2020 Unified State Plan was written, which was actually in 2019, and today. So historically, a modification like this would be somewhat simple because there wasn't a lot of big changes to the economy or labor market. Obviously, that has not been the case this time around. The longest U.S. economic expansion on record abruptly ended in February 2020 as the onset of the global COVID-19 pandemic. The unprecedented magnitude of the decline in employment and production and its broad reach across the economy warranted the declaration of a recession. And though it ranks as one of the shortest recessions in U.S. economic history, spanning only 2 months, it also ranks as one of the deepest in terms of economic impact. By the end of 2020, the national economy declined 3.5%, which was the worst year since demobilizing from World War II, and a full percentage point lower than the worst year during the Great Recession. The impact of COVID-19 was sudden, widespread, and after almost 2 years, the nature of a normal workplace continues to evolve. Traditional definitions of a normal workplace were upended for many. Working remotely became the norm for many jobs, some that previously were not considered suitable for such an arrangement. I would offer today as an example. Here we are in 2022 doing this virtual presentation because many of us can work remote now. Data is just now becoming available to quantify how employers and workers are adapting to this shifting new normal. Increasing quit rates and decreasing labor participation rates led to what initially became popularly referred to as the Great Resignation. But the latest data indicates that most workers aren't really leaving the workforce. They're leaving jobs to find a better job. So quits are elevated, but so are hires. And so now the term is kind of the Great Reshuffle. And it's gone from the Great Resignation to more of the Great Reshuffle to better describe this evolving dynamic in the labor market. So that's all drawn from the labor market analysis as well as the economic analysis update that was included in this modification. Does anyone have any questions, comments, suggestions on updates related to the data-driven decision-making pieces that I just went over? I'm going to pull up chat. I'll also say that at the end, I'm going to show you how you can submit comments over email. We have a page for that, and I'm also here in just a second for anyone who wants to download it. I'm going to put the link to the modification PDF so you can download that and read at your convenience. I'm not seeing any, so I'm going to go ahead and move forward. So the next item of federal guidance that I'm going to go over is reemployment. So the federal guidance stated that states should examine how well their systems and operations across the WIOA One-Stop Partners program, including unemployment insurance, can work more seamlessly together to positively affect the shared goal of reemployment, particularly for individuals with barriers to employment, including individuals with disabilities. The federal guidance also mentioned ensuring that reemployment would help those impacted by the pandemic. So some modifications included in this state plan to help address that was the Apprenticeship Expansion program. So in 2021, the Apprenticeship Expansion program anticipated that the state will award about approximately $5 million to grantees with a goal of serving 750 to 800 new registered apprentices and 40 new registered apprenticeship programs. Additionally, the State Board Apprenticeship Committee has been working on several things. First of all, they are exploring creating sector advisory groups to work with the U.S. Department of Labor Office of Apprenticeship on standards for registering apprentices. This committee also redesigned the Apprenticeship Illinois website with employer input over the summer of 2021. It is also actively working on marketing and outreach for businesses interested in participating in apprenticeships. The eligible training provider list offers programs that are qualified for WIOA funded training. One of the requirements for many of these programs is that they lead to high demand occupation employment in Illinois. The modification notes that shortages in early childhood care prompted the state to include those occupations on the previous eligible training provider list and the latest eligible training provider list. Also, as Illinois starts the implementation of the state's Climate and Equitable Job Act, which includes a strong workforce component, the eligible training provider list will be updated to include occupations that support Illinois' move to clean energy and the production of electric vehicles. Restarting of service integration work that was paused as the strain of COVID-19 on the workforce system forced us to prioritize speed of service delivery over efficiency. We are bringing back the Job Training and Economic Development Program, JTED, that had been previously eliminated due to funding cuts. As part of that retooling of the program, definitions and priorities aligning with WIOA were incorporated. This alignment with WIOA is part of Illinois' continued movement toward streamlining the workforce system that leads to a coordinated approach to service and expands job training opportunities to underserved populations. The WIOA Business Engagement Committee is starting a pilot project to encourage industry partners in the manufacturing sector through a relationship with a business association who will act as the business champion to participate in the WIOA system. The committee is also working on a project to develop and implement a unified messaging strategy to be utilized by all levels and regions of Illinois' workforce development system. Increase in demand for IDES services during the pandemic revealed the need for new and increased just-in-time communication strategies to the unemployed. Because every unemployed person's experience and need is unique, IDES has looked at multiple ways to improve communications with a focus on those individuals who experience barriers to accessing public services. IDES improved web-based information, such as making IDES websites mobile friendly, adding information about other types of assistance, and using plain language. So that again was a high-level view of some of the changes incorporated into the modification to address the reemployment guidance from the federal government. Does anyone have any questions, comments, suggestions on this piece of the modification? Well, if you do, again, feel free to throw those in the chat as we move forward. So the third kind of tenet of the federal guidance was equity in service delivery and education programming. So that guidance said that states should develop education, training, and career service strategies that better address and promote equity in recruitment, service design, implementation, and support services that aim to provide equitable access and outcomes to all communities seeking state services. So I kind of want to dig into the fact that the overarching vision and goals and strategies and activities to accomplish those vision and goals remain unchanged from 2020. We felt that those were a bedrock to the state plan and did a great job of holding up the workforce system through the past 2 years. And you can see on the screen there, I have the vision that is included in the state plan. However, there was language added to the vision section of the state plan mentioning the work being done by the IWIB and its committees, as well as the Governor's Commission on Equity, and how that ongoing work will certainly inform the process for developing a new vision, goals, strategies, and activities in 2024. So this is just some of that language that was added. I'm going to read it over real fast for you. So over the past 2 years, there's been a drive to use a lens of equity when viewing the workforce system. Building on Governor Pritzker's equity and economic prosperity agenda, IWIB created an equity task force in November 2020 to address equity within the Illinois workforce system. Among its top priorities, this is addressing the Governor's Commission. Among its top priorities, the Commission will find ways to strengthen and diversify existing workforce training programs to address shortages, expand access to talent, and to promote equity and inclusion across industries. The work of the Commission and the IWIB will be explored over the next 2 years and be used to help inform the 2024 state workforce plan. Strategies and activities in the Unified State Plan were updated to reflect that while those overarching themes and ideas laid out in 2020 remain relevant and are working, adjustments did need to be made to adapt to an economy transformed over the past 2 years. So for example, in the state plan, there's an activity titled Develop Strategic Indicators, Benchmarks, and Related Planning Data Resources. It was updated to reflect the fact that the pandemic caused the need for the augmentation of traditional labor market data with alternative data sources to reflect the most current data available. Pandemic-related economic changes were nearly unprecedented in scope and its rapidness. Traditional LMI sources did not keep pace with the rapid economic changes starting in March 2020. So planning efforts incorporated new data elements, such as labor participation rates, remote working, and key occupational wages derived from current placement ads. So does anyone have any questions, comments, or suggestions related to the equity and service delivery and education programming modifications that I just covered? And once again, I'm going to say this at the end of every section. This is a very high-level view. There are obviously many more changes that are incorporated. These are the themes of the modification that were used. We encourage you to download that modification PDF and review it at your leisure. All right, so we'll move on to the fourth piece of federal guidance that was incorporated into this modification, and that is enhance supportive service offerings. So in the guidance, the federal government said that states should consider providing assistance with access to transportation, referrals to physical and mental health assistance, house assistance, child and dependent care, and income supports such as UI and TANF. So some of the high-level modifications we included to address that. IDS improved its web-based offerings that are to be considerate of barriers that people in poverty typically face. So those are those services that we just covered, such as transportation, caregiving, digital and language access, and are intended to reduce the time associated with receiving services. So these web-based offerings are intended to support people that have barriers and reduce the time in receiving services, and also reduce the chance of not getting benefits in a timely manner, and further provide information about how to find WIOA partner services and financial resources from other sources. Again, TANF, SNAP, utility relief, and other services such as that. So this is the shortest section. Does anyone have any questions or comments on this? All right, and I see we have some comments in there. Is that related to enhanced supportive service offerings or a different section? Okay, well, while they type, I will move on to our next section. So I put this into the chat and we'll include this in the follow-up email. But again, you can download a draft of the current modification. It's a rather big file, so just be aware of that. But again, we encourage you to download that and review it. This starts the beginning of the public comment period on the modification, which will run from, it started yesterday, and it will run through the entire month of February. Comments, suggestions, anything regarding the modification can be submitted up until close of business on February 28th. And we do encourage people to take this month to really review this document. Again, it is a large document. Review it and make any of suggestions or comments throughout the month of February. So that's our next immediate step. And then just to give you an idea of the timeline for this is, so we will take any comments from you, from the Illinois Workforce Board, anyone really. We will incorporate those. We will have them incorporated by March 4th. And then it will go through one more approval process. And then staff with the core partners will submit the modification to the U.S. Department of Labor as well as the U.S. Department of Education by no later than March 15th. And with that, that is the end of our presentation. Does anyone have any questions, any comments, concerns? Apparently the person in the chat was a bot, so we don't have to worry about that. So we had a question to repeat some of the enhanced supportive services. I'm going to go back to that slide real quick. So IDES improved a lot of its web-based offerings and its options that are usually targeted towards people in poverty. So it was also considerate of the barriers that they face. Such as, so these are some of the barriers: transportation, caregiving, digital access, so access to the internet, as well as access to resources in their language. And it improved those web-based offerings to help overcome those barriers, to ensure that services were delivered in a timely manner, and also reduce the chances of not getting those benefits. Also within those web-based offerings that were updated, IDES included information about other WIOA partner services, as well as other financial services that might be of interest to people landing on those web pages. So information about SNAP, about TANF, about utility relief, other items like that. Yeah, and just a clarification that the deadline for submitting public comment is 5 p.m. on February 28th. So the end of this month, February 28th, 5 p.m., we will shut down the public comment period. And one other thing that I'll add too is that so in addition to being able to download the PDF from of the modification from that website that I put into the public chat and that you'll get in the follow-up email, we'll also work to include a recording of this webinar as well as a PDF of these slides for you to be able to download there, and also include that stuff in the follow-up communication with you. I'll give one more beat in case anyone has any questions or concerns about anything, whether the modification or the public comment period, how to submit public comment. Does anyone have any other questions before we leave here today? All right, well, I appreciate you showing up. For those of us facing this blizzard, best of luck, stay warm. And I've just seen a question coming in. I am reading through that. Could you elaborate a little bit on what you mean by IDES referrals to WIOA? Do you mean referrals to other core partners? Yeah, I would say generally, yes, that is part of some of the modification talks about streamlining of services and alignment. And that generally has been included in there. I don't know if there would be any specific recommendations. Does that make sense? In that it is acknowledged and is something that is being explored. Yeah, no, thank you. All right, well, if no one has any other questions, we'll give you back 20 minutes of your day today. Again, appreciate everyone's participation in this and look for those follow-up communications.